In San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, Elon Musk's costly settlement with the SEC. He is out as Tesla chair, and both he and Tesla will pay a combined $40 million in fines. But did he get off easy? We will look at the road ahead. Plus, Instagram has a new boss. Adam Mosseri, the vice president of product, will lead the company, taking over from the social network's founders after their exit. And the United States agrees to a trade deal with Mexico and Canada after months of high-level negotiations. We will look at the impact for tech as the China trade war continues. But first, to our top story, the Securities and Exchange Commission is making Tesla CEO Elon Musk pay a price for his infamous funding-secured tweet. Over the weekend, Musk agreed to step down as chair of the company he founded for 3 years. The settlement mandates separate $20 million fines for both Tesla and Musk, that money going towards harmed shareholders. SEC Chair Jay Clayton praised the agreement, saying this matter has been widely followed by our Main Street investors. When companies and corporate insiders make statements, they must act responsibly. So, what happens now for Tesla and its continuing attempts to meet production deadlines? And what about Musk, who remains CEO? To answer that, we've got Ivan Feinseth, Tiger's financial partner, CIO in New York, and with me here in the studio, Bloomberg's Dana Hull, who's been very busy this weekend covering Tesla. So, what happened over the weekend that triggered this about-face?
Well, we don't know exactly, but the stock tanked like 14% on Friday, and that probably had some influence on Musk's thinking. So he took the settlement deal, and then this weekend was a big weekend just for deliveries. So now the sort of narrative is back on how did the quarter go, and that's what everyone is focusing on now.
That said, what the SEC wanted in its original suit was much more extreme than this result. And there's a question, Ivan, did Musk and Tesla get off easy?
I think that the end result for Musk and for Tesla is very positive. I mean, the concern was that if he was no longer CEO, the company could really suffer. That could have hurt the employees, the shareholders, and the car owners. So I think this is an excellent outcome and allows him to be CEO. The company does need to have more governance in place. Obviously, if they had more governance, what had happened may have not have happened. So I think it's good for the company that they separate the chairman and the CEO role. They're adding 2 independent board members. And as I said, I think Elon is very lucky, and this is a great outcome for him and the company.
Dana, do you expect that separating the chair and CEO roles will actually have an impact at a company where Elon Musk is larger than life, and clearly he doesn't appear to be moderating his behavior?
Well, to be clear, he has to step down as chair, but he's still on the board, and he can be reelected as chair in 3 years. So it's like a timeout from the chairman role, but he's not like banned from being chairman for life. And I think what really matters is who are the 2 new independent directors going to be, and is the independent chairman going to be someone existing or someone new?
So, Ivan, do you expect that this will have an actual impact then on the governance of this company?
Yes, I think that the board, even though that they are very friendly to Elon and he is a board member, I think they needed to increase their governance, and I think that it will have a positive effect, and I think that the outcome is still very positive. There was concerns on Friday that this could be detrimental to the company, that there were people predicting that this, if he was removed as chairman, it could have put the company into a death spiral. So I think it would have negatively impacted the company. But so I think that having him remain as chairman, as CEO, is the most important thing, and that was the outcome. And I think that this is a positive step that they can now move forward to focus on production of the Model 3 and the introduction of the semi-truck and the new Model Y and the Roadster.
Meantime, we are waiting for key metrics on Model 3 production this week as we near the end of the quarter. Dana, you've been out reporting all weekend. We've had Bloomberg reporters dispatched to multiple locations, Tesla locations across the country to monitor delivery. What did we find?
They were jammed. So, it was uneven across the country. Like the Brooklyn store was pretty quiet on Saturday morning, but in Chicago there were like 75 people all jammed into the showroom. And multiple reports on social media of people getting their cars as late Sunday night. And so it was by all means a heroic end of quarter push. Employees from across the country were volunteering at the showrooms. A lot of existing Tesla owners showed up to help out. Now we just need the actual numbers.
Ivan, what are the numbers you're going to be watching in terms of whether Tesla can deliver on these promises that Musk has made, even in the midst of all of this controversy?
Well, I think anything over 3,000 Model 3s a week would be positive. He did hit 6,000 one week a few months ago, but there's huge demand for the car, which is very good. I mean, the Model 3 is spectacular, as are the S and the X, which is the most important thing, that they produce a great car. There's a lot of demand for it, and there's a lot of excitement around the car and the company, and that is the key thing that will keep everything moving forward.
Dana, why is this quarter coming up so critical?
Musk needs to be profitable, and he said on the last earnings call that he expects to be sustainably profitable in the second half of the year. So if they have a strong delivery showing and can sell some ZEV credits, they might actually show a quarterly profit, which would be the first time in several years.
So, Ivan, all of this considered, we've got now some suggestions on independent board members. We're going to be speaking with Gene Munster of Loop Ventures a bit later in the show. He's suggesting Al Gore as a potential chairman for Tesla. What do you make of some of these names that have been thrown out there?
I think that somebody that has from the auto industry as chairman would really be more positive than somebody like Al Gore, who is outside the auto industry. I think
like who?
Bob Lutz would be a good name, even though Bob Lutz has been very critical of Elon and Tesla. So there are a number of retired and even current auto executives that I think would be very additive to the company.
Dana, what's your reaction to some of the names that we're hearing?
I think there needs to be another woman on the board for sure, and I would argue someone with utility experience, given Tesla's ambitions in the energy market. Traditional auto, I can't really see Tesla going along with that. I mean, their whole point has been to disrupt auto. But I don't know what the process is for searching for the new board members and who's going to decide if they're bringing in a search firm or not.
So what do we know about the timeline?
He has to resign as chairman within 45 days, and I'm imagining that they will try to get new board members as fast as possible, but I forget what the exact deadline is on that.
And Ivan, aside from Model 3 production, what are the other challenges ahead? I mean, he's promised profitability. I mean, as late as early Sunday morning after this whole settlement was announced, he said another, revving up the troops email to the entire staff talking about, what needed to be done in order to deliver on this goal of profitability that he has promised.
Well, first, I do agree with Dana that the new board member should be a woman in light of the new bill that was just signed. And they do need to have some diversity on their board. But really the focus is going to be continuing ramping up the Model 3 production and the goal to profitability, because those are the two key promises that Elon has made. And then it will be the introduction of the semi-truck, which is also getting a lot of orders. In fact, Walmart Canada just placed an order for, I think, 30 more trucks, because their goal is to be 80% renewable fuel for their entire truck fleet by, I think, 2020. So there is a lot of interest from a lot of the trucking companies and the consumer product companies that truck a lot of goods in the new truck. And I think that will be the next game changer for the company.
All right, Ivan, they're referencing the new California SB 826 bill that was just signed into law, requiring that all public corporate boards have at least one woman by the end of 2019 and have more aggressive goals in coming years. All right, Ivan Feinseth of Tigris Financial, thank you so much, as well as Bloomberg's Dana Hall. I know it's going to be a busy few more days for you, Dana. Thank you, as always. Coming up, this latest Facebook breach is its biggest ever, 50 million accounts. But unlike Cambridge Analytica, the outrage is dialed way down. We'll discuss. Also, we know who the new head of Instagram will be. We'll tell you next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. Listen on the Bloomberg app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. Last week, the co-creators of Instagram threw in the towel, and Facebook just named its new leader, Adam Mosseri. Mosseri was the vice president of product at Instagram and has been with Facebook since 2008, where he joined as a member of the design team. He will now be tasked with running one of, if not the, company's most important product. Joining us now to discuss Bloomberg Tech, Sarah Fryer, who covers Facebook and Instagram. So who is Adam Mosseri? He's obviously been there a long time. Is he a Zuck loyalist?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he is a person who has worked on one of Facebook's most important products, the news feed, and then he was brought into Instagram in the spring to be their director of product, and that sort of helped bring in some Facebook's goals for Instagram, and now he's going to take it over. But the way that this is managed, you're seeing these picture of Kevin Systrom, Mike Krieger, and Adam Mosseri all together announcing this as like a friendly transition. He says on his Instagram that he plans on establishing the same sort of values and focus on the communities the founders have. So after last week's news, after we reported about all of the tension that there's been in recent months between Instagram and Facebook that led to the founders' departure, they are trying to explain today that not a lot is going to change, although gradually it will.
You had reported that Mosseri was the most likely person to get this job. We've heard that employees internally have been really frustrated, nervous. What's the feeling now?
So people expected Mosseri would take over this role. The main problem that employees are facing right now is that there's not going to be somebody with a founder level authority to really advocate for what Instagram's vision and future is going to be. Maybe fewer bold bets that are just Instagram specific. The battle that, for example, Instagram had to fight earlier this year to launch Instagram TV, which is a competitor to Facebook Watch. Will Instagram be able to do things like that in the future? So, this is something that, like, the title for Adam Mosseri is now head of Instagram. It's not CEO. It's not a Kevin Systrom level title. And one of the anxieties here is that Instagram becomes more of a product division of Facebook and less of its own company within a company.
All right, now on to other pressing news about Facebook that we've been digesting all weekend. Facebook saying it was a, quote, sophisticated attack that led to the hack of 50 million accounts involving 3 different bugs. These are the words of Facebook Vice President Carolyn Everson at an Adweek panel Monday talking about the latest and largest data breach in Facebook history. 50 million accounts impacted, as I said. Unlike the more publicized Cambridge Analytica data scandal, this was an actual hack, one that Facebook has already notified the FBI about. So just what can the FBI do in such an instance? To answer that, we've got Mark Ray, Managing Director and Head of Digital Investigations and Cyber Defense at Nardello. Prior to that, he was a special agent with the FBI's Cyber Division investigating international cyber crime. Sarah's still with us, of course. Mark, what do you imagine the FBI is actually doing here, and how are they liaising with Facebook?
Well, probably one of the first things they're doing is leveraging some of the pre-established relationships that they had at Facebook. This would involve partnering in a way with Facebook or outside investigators or outside law firms that they brought in an effort to try to preserve the evidence. One of the main reasons for bringing in law enforcement or working with the FBI in a matter like this is to try to preserve perishable evidence that may be on servers domestically or internationally.
Now, Sarah, what makes this different from the Cambridge Analytica scandal is in Cambridge Analytica, they were using publicly available information generally, and information that Facebook users, whether they really understood what they were consenting to, had consented to be used. But here you have an actual attack on Facebook accounts, at which point these hackers had access to everything in your private profile. Why aren't we hearing the same level of outrage, Sarah?
Well, there was a sort of a tangible misstep in the Cambridge Analytica situation, which is that humans decided it was totally fine for this developer to get all this profile information from all of Facebook's users. Facebook basically said, sure, take information on these people and on their friends, and once you have it, we trust you that you won't do anything bad with it. And of course, that developer passed it along to Cambridge Analytica, which then helped Donald Trump get elected in the 2016 election. So there's that political intrigue there too. In this case, the actual information that was breached, it's much worse. This is not just public information. This is private information. This is your private posts. This is the ability to post on your behalf. This is the ability to log into every other app that has a Facebook login connection. So it's much more serious.
Mark, how serious would you say this breach is?
Very significant. As we heard earlier, this was by far Facebook's largest data breach. But in the scale of data breaches of all time, it's very large. And the reason is, you mentioned earlier, it is a hack. Unlike so many large data breaches of the past where people are social engineered out of their credentials or other phishing attacks that may take advantage of duping them into providing their password, this is an attack that seems to be a true hack. As we heard this morning, a vulnerability was, or multiple vulnerabilities were taken advantage of by the attacker to then surreptitiously take advantage of these people's accounts. So it's significant, and it takes a sophisticated attacker to pull off something, having intimate knowledge of Facebook's application.
Now, Facebook says we may never know who's behind this, but what is your suspicion? Is this a nation state? Is this some criminal organization? And how are the consequences different depending on who actually perpetrated this attack?
Right. I think based on the number of users involved here and the type of attack that we heard, I think all investigators need to look at all options. That means certainly the criminal element. Hacktivists could be associated with this, and also nation states. And don't forget insiders as well. This someone had very intimate knowledge of this. So, but if you think about the amount of data that was available, think back to the Yahoo hack and other large-scale data breaches like this. It's quite a wealth of information. So you have to look at the motive, or think about what motive would someone have. Someone can't take 50 million. Personal information of 50 million users and just go and sell it on the dark web today. There has to be a much more ulterior motive.
What do you imagine that motive could be?
Well, certainly espionage is at the top of my list. If you look at the types of groups that would benefit from such information, as we saw in the Yahoo attack, and now that's public, that it was attributed to Russian intelligence officers that were using it for targeting individuals, both government officials and executives in the private sector. Certainly there's a wealth of information on Facebook from 50 million users that could be used for espionage purposes.
All right.
Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg were also targeted in this hack, so that's something to note.
Yeah, the mention of an insider, that's definitely intriguing. All right, Sarah Fryer, Bloomberg Tech, thanks so much. Nartello's Mark Ray, thank you as well. The FBI has a busy week this week, apparently. Coming up, competition among carriers to be the first 5G network has been heating up, and Verizon may be one step ahead of the others. That is next. This is Bloomberg. The race to 5G has begun, and Verizon is already off to a head start. Today, the phone carrier announced the beginning of what it is calling the world's first commercial 5G network with the first in-home service. The company is offering 3 months of its 5G home service to residents in Houston, Indianapolis, LA, and Sacramento, with plans to expand to a mobile 5G network in 2019. Bloomberg's Caroline Height sat down with Verizon CEO Hans Vestberg to talk about the launch and the future of 5G.
I think that Verizon has worked for a long time with 5G. We have many use cases. The first use case we have is actually 5G in the home. Instead of having fiber to the home, we have wireless to the home. It's just a revolution what you can do with wireless. So we announced it 2 weeks ago that you can order it, and today we're going to make the first customers in the world in the 4 cities getting 5G at the home, which is just an exciting time for us.
But why is it revolutionary right here, right now? Because for many, the Internet of Things, the actual application of 5G doesn't really become a reality until 2019.
I think that many things are happening in 5G. I mean, we are doing home. There's definitely going to be a lot of enterprise solutions, IoT and all of that. But of course, you and me as consumers are going to get the 5G smartphones as well in 2019, which is going to be a totally new experience. So there's so many facets of 5G compared to 3G and 4G, where basically throughput and speed were the only 2 things you can actually trade on. Now you have latency that is super low. You have battery lifetime that can be extended for a long, long time. So there's so many things you can do with it. And that's why we started with the 5G home, because we think that's a totally new market for us where we can address our customers.
How many signed up?
We had a massive interest, but we do this limited, so it's only 4 cities. But I can tell you, we had so many people coming in and checking if their sort of zip code is included. So we're starting a little bit small. And when we have the global standard of 5G, we're going to roll it out to the masses of the country.
It's a lot of investment. When does it actually help your bottom line?
I think what is different with this technology is to have so many use cases compared to 4G, when I basically have consumer. This time I have enterprises, I have home, I have wireless customers, and a lower cost by using 5G. So I think that the return is much easier to see than in 4G.
But how quickly?
No, I think that you're going to see this over years. I mean, remember, our 4G customers are so important to us, and they're going to be there for a long time, and we need to see that they have a seamless experience. 5G is going to roll out, and we're going to see smartphones in 2019, but volume-wise, end 2020 or something like that.
Competition is hotting up, particularly if we do see Sprint and T-Mobile gather force and be a real competitor when it comes to 5G. How do you feel about that?
No, I think that we are focused on our customers in this moment, and I think that we are more focused on executing our strategy. We have all our assets. We have a great set of assets to execute on, so we don't spend too much time thinking about what others are doing. We have our strategy.
You've been streamlining your own workforce. When might you see this add to jobs? Will the rollout of 5G add to jobs at Verizon?
So what we're doing right now, we have a volunteer offer because we want to stay ahead of the curve when we're transforming with the whole digitalization, with the whole 5G and all of that. So we have a program that we announced last year, 10 billion in 4 years, and of course we're working on that one, but they are not really correlated. We're doing a volunteer program because we want to see that our employees have a great way to take that offer if they want to.
So when will you start to see the enterprise really make important moves for you? How important is the enterprise as part of your business when you're rolling out particularly the Internet of Things?
Enterprise is very important, and of course when you come to 5G you can think about the real-time enterprise. You can take away all the cords. We're already now talking to many enterprises what use cases they see from 5G, and we have a good relationship with the big accounts. So, but probably at the latter part of 2019 when the device is going to be more mature and the network is going to be there.
And what about the regulatory perspective and the way in which people are still fighting out when it looks at the SEC, the FTC, people are looking at net neutrality even? How much do you feel that the US, having come from Europe, is the place that you want to be building a business that is focused on consumer and enterprise within telecoms?
No, I think that the regulatory environment is important. I mean, I think that regulatory, I've worked in 180 countries. I've always seen the regulatory and the investments. They need to go in hand and see that you do the right investments in the country. And I think that this country has their set of rules. We're following those and we're supporting those.
And quickly, lastly, you've gone very much down the route of 5G rather than content. AT&T thinks content is king. How sure are you that you've made the right decision?
I think we have a lot of content. First, there's a lot of content in network. We have all our brands with Yahoo Finance to Yahoo Entertainment, those type of content we like. I think the discussion has been more about sort of the distributors, the TV channels and all of that, and that is an area we're not that interested in, but of course content going to play a vital role. We partner in some areas.
No acquisitions?
Not any large entities that everybody's talking about. We're happy with the assets we have.
Verizon CEO Hans Vestberg there with our own Caroline Hyde. Well, when we come back, as Elon Musk prepares to step down as chairman of the board of Tesla, ideas for who will replace him are flying in. We'll discuss which former VP could make the short list. Find out when we return. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. A new chapter for Tesla and CEO Elon Musk. Musk has learned that it's tough to win a fight with the SEC when the agency decides to play hardball. A massive fine, and he's out as chairman of the company for the next 3 years. Earlier, I caught up with analyst Gene Munster of Loop Ventures to talk about how this will impact the governance of Tesla.
I mean, it's a huge deal, and the reason is it allows the company to have some more structure. That's been the piece that's been vastly missing here, especially over the last 6 months in terms of some of Elon's behavior. And the reason why more structure and giving up the chairmanship will provide a new level of structure, the reason why that's important is that allows the company to better retain existing employees, which has been a big problem over the past year, and separately recruit new people too. And so by creating this, essentially getting rid of his dual citizenship as CEO and chairman, it provides, I think, an important opportunity. This is a gift that Tesla essentially has gotten from the SEC. The board didn't have the strength to do it on their own. Their hand has been forced, but this is ultimately for the better of the company.
You're suggesting some names for these two new independent directors. One of them is former Boeing CEO Jim McInerney. Another is former Vice President Al Gore, who you also suggest could be chairman. You know, he's a fairly divisive person, though he has been very supportive of Tesla and Musk in the past. Why these two names? Have you had any conversations with them? Are they actually interested?
Have not had any conversations with them, but I think that they make a ton of sense for two reasons, independent in each of them. But in the case of Al, his take is that obviously renewable energy is a big part of what he's been advocating for many years. And I think Tesla's mission, which may surprise some people, which is to accelerate the globe's adoption of renewable energy, fits well with kind of his mission. Now, there is the one challenge with his chairmanship, which is that he's currently on the board of Apple, which I think he enjoys that role. But he, to me, is the ideal person. The second, in terms of bringing the old Boeing CEO in, that has this kind of play, which I think could be appealing to Elon in the sense that the whole space industry, aerospace, and his expertise on the manufacturing side, I think, would bode exceptionally well. So either of those would be a home run for the company, and I think both of those are two people that Elon would agree to, which is an important part of the equation.
Now, Tesla's problems are certainly not behind it. We are waiting for a big update on Model 3 production. What do you see as the biggest risks, the biggest challenges ahead?
So the focus quickly shifts here to, as you said, Emily, to Model 3 production. So we're going to get numbers probably tomorrow, maybe today, but they typically report those at the beginning of the third month of the quarter. The expectation based on a September 7th blog post from Elon was that they've doubled their production of Model 3. If they do that, that's better than 50,000 Model 3s produced for the September quarter. I think that will be a positive for the story. I think some investors look at Elon's published comments with a grain of salt, and so I think the mere fact that they are formal numbers, I think, will still be viewed as a positive. And it's a big deal because this is what they need to do to scale.
All right, let's continue our conversation now on how Tesla's governance and Musk's behavior may be changed from here with Bloomberg Business Week's Max Chafkin. First question, Max, do we think Musk's behavior will actually change as a result of this deal?
I think this was, in all likelihood, pretty embarrassing for Elon Musk, in terms of his relationship with employees, in terms of his sort of public relationship. So you would think that this kind of modest penalty from the SEC that Tesla's agreed to would kind of slow him down at least, or make him think twice, before he tweets something rash. That said, as Gene pointed out in that interview, I mean, this is still Elon Musk's company. When you look at the board, even when you add in these two additional independent directors, I mean, he's very close with many of the board members. He's still CEO. He's still, the guy in terms of, the person customers think of as most associated with this. So you could imagine him sort of pretty much going back to the way things were, although maybe with a little bit just more caution than before.
This settlement also requires the board to create a committee to essentially oversee his tweets, oversee any communications with the public. How do you think that's actually going to work?
I don't know. Good luck. I mean, it's also the way it was phrased. It looked like they only have oversight over his Tesla-related tweets. So again, I don't really understand how that's going to work. My guess is there'll be some sort of audit, or there'll be some sort of way that they can formally say, hey, you shouldn't have tweeted that. It's hard to imagine that he's going to actually have to run most of his tweets by compliance or whatever. Although you would think that they would try to come up with a system where if he's going to tweet something that has to do with financial information, there would be a process. At least that's what you'd hope if you don't want Tesla to run into more trouble with the SEC.
Now, we've also learned that Tesla is applying to set up another 4,000 square foot tent to protect vehicles that it has produced. What are the implications here about how well production is going and whether they can meet the goals that Musk has said they would meet?
So this tent is probably not as big a deal as the last tent. The last tent, they were actually making the cars under that thing, which is, by auto industry standards and even by Elon Musk's own admission, kind of strange and maybe even a little desperate. This is a way to store these cars that have been sort of piling up that Tesla hasn't been able to deliver without them, getting rained on or getting, little rocks, blown on them or otherwise damaged. So I wouldn't read in this too much, except that it's another piece of evidence showing that they're having trouble, getting these cars to customers, which is no small thing when you're talking about the kind of numbers that Tesla is predicting.
So this is a big week. We're watching for these Model 3 production numbers. What are we going to learn here that will signal, what goals can or cannot be met in the next quarter and through the year?
So the question of how many they made is obviously a big one, and we'll see. How everybody sort of assumes that because of that September 7th blog post that they're going to meet their goal and maybe exceed it by some amount. We'll see just how much that is, and then the other big question is how many are they able to deliver, because deliveries are what is going to lead to revenue and profitability, and profitability is crucial for Tesla. Now, because Elon has sort of gone around saying they need to be profitable, but also in the long run because Tesla has all this debt. Many people think it'll have to go back to capital markets. So if they're able to get to profitability sooner rather than later, then that's going to be huge. That's going to give them the upper hand in any kind of negotiation, say next year when they're trying to, raise some more money.
All right, well, we are monitoring those numbers, and we'll have them as soon as they come in. Bloomberg Business Week's Max Chafkin. As always, Max, thank you. Well, the Trump administration is suing the state of California over its net neutrality laws after Governor Jerry Brown signed a state bill in defiance of federal regulation. The legislation prohibits internet service providers in the state from stratifying users and websites by those who can pay for faster surfing speeds and service, in effect blocking broadband providers from slowing traffic on their airwaves while charging for faster access. In response, the Trump administration filed a federal court complaint accusing California of trying to second-guess the government's authority to regulate internet providers. Governor Brown also signed a bill setting a new deadline for California-based publicly traded companies to have female directors. Some 165 companies with all-male boards will have to find one or more female directors by the end of 2019. The law further requires a company with 5 directors to ensure at least 2 are female by 2021, and those with 6 or more directors will need at least 3 women on the board. This is a threshold that many of the state's biggest companies, including Facebook and Tesla, do not currently meet. Still ahead, NAFTA is no more, with a new agreement called USMCA set to replace the $1.2 billion trade deal. We'll look at what it means for tech. This is Bloomberg. The U.S. has reached a trilateral trade deal with Canada and Mexico, covering $1.2 trillion in trade. The replacement for NAFTA will be known as USMCA and comes after months of high-level negotiations between the 3 nations. President Trump touted the deal Monday from the White House.
It's my great honor to announce that we have successfully completed negotiations on a brand new deal to terminate and replace NAFTA.
What does it mean for the tech industry? Well, the deal has a focus on autos and intellectual property. Let's discuss with former White House presidential advisor and co-author of a new book, The Leadership Lab, Pippa Malmgren, joining us now from L.A. So, Pippa, how consequential is this for the business community and more specifically the tech community, especially given the trade war that is happening with China?
Oh, I think it's very important. Just renaming the deal gives it new life. And there are certain specific provisions that fundamentally mean we're going to have more inflation in the United States. It's going to make prices go up. For the tech sector, it actually shows there's hope for a deal with the Chinese. So we'll get a lot of loud blustering, a lot of aggressive language, and then suddenly, bang, you get a deal. So that's potentially promising, actually.
Well, and there's the question of whether, the bluster will actually lead to the consequences that the president has threatened, or whether this will, in general, it is just bluster. It is just potentially marketing on behalf of the president.
Well, look, bottom line, the president is a property guy. This is how you do property deals. You put everything on the table. You say everything is open for negotiation. You make a lot of threats. So this reflects the president's negotiating style, whether we like it or not. And fundamentally, it is usually in trade negotiations, you do reach impasse after impasse.
What does this mean for the auto industry? We know that the traditional auto industry, is certainly affected by trade with Canada and Mexico, and has also been fiercely competing with tech giants in the realm of self-driving and connected cars. What does this mean for U.S. automakers?
Look, automakers are going through vast change. Already we're going to enter the driverless car era where we're not going to need the traditional combustion engine. We're going to have electric engines. We're going to have so much innovation is taking place anyway. But what this deal does is it's going to raise the cost of producing automobiles in the U.S. So workers are definitely going to get paid more. Parts are going to cost more. And that cost will get passed on, and it's going to show up in the form of higher inflation rates for the broad economy and higher inflation rates for the general public. That's going to be an issue for the Fed. So it's, take from one hand and give with the other. We get a deal, but it has some consequences that are both beneficial for workers and adverse for general inflation circumstances. It's an interesting exercise in leadership, because the president will definitely claim credit that he's gotten something done here that everyone said was impossible. And it's kind of hard to take away from that, and it has to make you more encouraged that we're going to get some kind of an equal outcome on China.
Meantime, the dynamics in China and with China are very different. The threat there, the concern there is their tech leadership, their AI leadership, and whether they could beat the United States in an AI arms race, if you will. How will that then impact the actual fallout from this potential trade war or resolution, if there is one?
Yeah, well, I have a whole section about this in my new book, and we are in the new arms race, which is for computational power. The Chinese are building a facility right now in Anhui, which will have 1 million times the computational capability of the entire planet today in about 2 years' time. We've introduced Summit, which is a supercomputer that can do in 1 second what takes a human being 6.3 billion years to calculate. So this is where the action is, because the more Internet of Things, the more data that you have, the more you need computational power to support it. That's the arms race. So whatever deal we make on trade, it doesn't even begin to encompass what the new issues are going to be in that world.
All right. Dr. Pippa Malmgren, author of The Leadership Lab. Pippa, thank you so much for weighing in. Now, this new trade deal is timely for automakers, in particular the PSA Group, the maker of Peugeot, Citroën, Opel, and Vauxhall. It left the U.S. market in 1991 and is now engineering a return within a decade, first with a car-sharing service and then actually selling vehicles. PSA Chair and CEO Carlos Tavares spoke exclusively with Bloomberg's Caroline Connon ahead of the Paris Motor Show.
This is a very timely decision because we are now preparing for our U.S. comeback. And of course, this is part of the framework that we need to know before we make the final decisions, which we intend to do within the next few months. So we are eager to listen to President Trump on this matter. And of course, we are Darwinian at the PSA Group. We adapt to the conditions in which we operate. And of course, we will adapt our plans and our strategy to the conditions that will be set by the US administration. And of course, we are eager to listen to the President.
You said that PSA would come back to the US and North America within the next 10 years. Could that accelerate your plan?
No, I don't think it will accelerate because we want to do things properly. First of all, we want to learn about the US consumer expectations, and we are already operating in the United States in terms of mobility services in order to learn and to understand this market as precisely as possible. And we will go step by step. We are now preparing our distribution model. We are now preparing what needs to be done in terms of manufacturing. We have already started to prepare the engineering of our products to be US regulation compliant. All of this is now under planning, and we just need now to synchronize the different parts of this business model in order to make it happen. And that should be done within the next few months.
Obviously, this is a relief in the short term, but we've seen new tariffs between the US and China. How are these new volume of tariffs between the US and China impacting your production and impacting prices?
You see, today most of our production is in Europe for the European market, in China for the Chinese market. Of course, there is some cross-manufacturing around the world, but it's reasonably limited. But we think that we need to produce our cars close to the market where they are bought. We believe that manufacturing our cars near the final destination makes sense from a business model standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, and from a customer expectation adaptation standpoint. So for us, it's quite natural to do so. Of course, for a global company like ours, we are very sensitive to all of those tariffs. We believe that in terms of wealth creation worldwide, it is better to have lower tariffs than higher tariffs. It creates less tension, a better collaboration across the different nations and communities. But anyway, as I said, we are Darwinian, we will adapt.
PSA CEO Carlos Tavares there speaking exclusively with Bloomberg's Caroline Connon ahead of the Paris Motor Show. Still ahead, science fiction series Black Mirror has a dystopian view of the impact of technology, but now tech may be changing the way we watch the show itself. How Netflix is giving viewers a say in Black Mirror next. This is Bloomberg.
San Francisco, a lot of tech action today.
Our top stories this morning in D.C. and
the Dow and the S&P.
Shall we? So the euro on a 7-day
sizable moves in the currency market, averages down 0.5%.
We begin in the oil patch. Saudi Arabia.
Brent crude pretty much unchanged.
Welcome to Bloomberg, the first word Asia.
The U.S. and Japan duke it out over exchange.
China's slumping onshore bond market is great.
Netflix changed the TV game once with binge watching, letting viewers watch an entire season all at once. And now it's switching things up again. The company is now developing a series of choose-your-own-adventure specials, allowing viewers to decide the next storyline in a TV or movie. Science fiction series Black Mirror will be one of the first of these projects, debuting an interactive episode in its 5th season this year. Bloomberg's Chris Palmieri joins us from LA to tell us more. So, Chris, how exactly is this going to work?
Well, we don't know all the details yet, but people are going to be able to watch and then sort of choose from several different endings of the episodes. The season will start in December. And, this isn't totally new for Netflix. They've tried this a couple of times on some children programming. This is the first time they've taken a big hit TV show and tried to do this.
How do you think multiple storylines will impact viewership? I mean, I can imagine with a kids show, maybe not as much, but when, people have an emotional connection to a series, part of that engagement is driven by, how it ends and not knowing.
Yeah, I mean, this is not an entirely new idea. HBO has tried experimenting with this. If you think about, a lot of the live singing shows, you could call in and pick the winner. What's different now is, a lot of people are watching on mobile devices, so it's pretty easy on your iPad maybe to just click a different ending. And if you think about, we all watched the last episode of The Sopranos and wondered what happened and if there was a better way it could end, maybe this is the future.
Netflix, as we know, has a huge budget for its original content. Is the cost that this will entail just a drop in the bucket?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it will cost more, and that's one of the reasons why studios in the past have avoided this. You could maybe even pay double to work all these different endings, but in the overall budget, I mean, Netflix has something like 700 shows in development, $6-7 billion of production spending. So, yeah, this won't cost them that much.
And there will also be video gaming elements incorporated into the series. You know, explain how that will work.
Right. Well, there was a lot of rumors whether Netflix was actually going to get into gaming directly, and that's not the case. But they've been licensing a lot of IP like Minecraft and turning those into TV shows. And that is obviously video games is a very interactive medium, and so they're trying to use this technology in the same way there. Again, just starting.
And Black Mirror will be one of the first shows that they're experimenting with here. Is this something that we would expect Netflix to then do season after season after season?
Well, we'll see. I mean, TV watching has always been a very passive thing. I mean, you just come home and you lay on the couch and you veg out, and whether people ultimately really want to interact with their TV that way remains to be seen. But if there's a company that's going to try it and a time to try it, it's Netflix and now.
All right, Bloomberg's Chris Palmieri in LA. Thanks so much. Fascinating. We'll have to see how this works out. That does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Tomorrow on the show, we are at the GeekWire Summit in Seattle. Don't miss our conversation with Sue Desmond-Hellmann, CEO of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'm Emily Chang. This is Bloomberg.